Today, I want to talk about the whole concept of thoughts. Do we create our reality? I'm sure that you have heard that what we think we create, and how does that relate to what we understand as energy healing and our own soul development? How does that understanding help us with our soul purpose, with being better parents, with showing up for our children? So let's talk about thoughts. So, does our thinking, does the way we think affect what happens to us? Do we actually create our reality based on our thoughts? And you'll see that I was a little cheeky in the description. I put yes, no, what. So the answer is that it's complicated. It's not a simple yes, no answer. There are ways that we can think about our thoughts, and we can understand what happens with our thoughts. What is a creative process with our thoughts? What are the positive aspects? What are the negative aspects? And then how do we deal with them? Again, thank you for being here. Please ask questions. So, yes, in a sense, our thoughts are very important. However, just because you think something doesn't mean that it's automatically going to happen. And I think this is especially true when people become really afraid of their thoughts, because if I have a negative thought, does that mean that thing is going to come true? And then if something unfortunate does happen, then we think it must have caused that because I thought of it. And so there's a lot of that kind of law of attraction type information that's out there that talks about this particular concept, your thoughts creating your reality. And in a way, that is true, but again, it's complicated. It's not as easy as you think it happens. So what is useful then to think about thoughts? Because here we're talking about energy, soul, legacy, conversations, we want to think of everything in terms of the energy that we're creating. What do our thoughts add to our energetic signature, which then other people pick up on? So our kids especially are the ones that we are most concerned with, our kids and our family, because we do affect each other. The thoughts create a field. There's an energy, there's a vibration to our thoughts. And it's not our thoughts alone, it's a combination of everything that makes up our energy body. You can think of your thoughts, think of them as part of your mental body. So part of what I teach in my programs and in my courses is for us to start examining our different energy bodies. So our energy body is contained of these different layers to the energy body. And so the mental body is one of those. So the mental body is everything that's related to thinking and ideas and thoughts. All of that is part of your mental body, which is one of the reasons why when we are working with our energy body, we want to work with all the different layers of our energy body, because especially if you are stuck like in a loop of negative thoughts or thoughts that are not very helpful, whether it's depressive thoughts or hopeless thoughts or worried thoughts. So all of those thoughts are connected to a particular energy. When you think of an emotion, that's an emotional body, that's a different body. If you feel fear and you're having these fearful thoughts, then those are energy. So we can't just be thinking of one aspect. They're all interrelated. Our thoughts are connected to our mental body. And our mental body affects our emotional body. Our emotional body affects our mental body. And so, yes, our thoughts are important. However, there's only so much impact that our thoughts have. So if you think something here, are you going to affect somebody who is taking the train in China? Probably not. At least we can't make a direct correlation to that person being affected. Now, can you affect, let's say, a plant that you have in your room, that there's more proximity there? Certainly, yes. Can you affect your children? Yes, because there's a lot more proximity there. So you want to think about the impact that your thoughts have in terms of the proximity that your energy body has to those other things. So, yes, our thoughts are important. However, there isn't a direct correlation with things out there, out in the world, with that one particular thought. For example, I know that as parents, we worry about our children. Let's say their first day of school, or the first time that they go on a sleepover, or the first time they go camping and you're not with them, or the first time they get on a plane, or the first time they drive by themselves. So, all of these potential for danger, as parents, it's inevitable that there's a thought that's going to cross our mind of the possibility that something could happen to them. And just in the range of possibility of everything that could happen, like, it's possible. Is it probable? Probably not. Just in terms of just percentages. So let's say it's the first time your 16-year-old drives a car alone in traffic in the middle of the day when you know that it's congested. Is it possible that they could get into an accident? Yes, it's always possible. Every time that we walk out the door, that something like that is going to happen. Is it probable? Probably not. The percentage of that happening is very low. So as parents, though, we still worry. It's natural for us to worry. I think the worry is part of us feeling protective of our children and wanting to protect them as much as possible. So in a sense, like, we think those thoughts, and then we, at least for me, for example, my experience was that I just got busy with other things. And so, yes, like, it was a fleeting thought that went through my mind, but I didn't focus on it. I did other things and then it was gone. Now, one of the things that happens with our thoughts is that we tend to focus on them and they tend to spiral. If you think of your mental body as one layer of your energy body, then the more you think that, then the more space it takes up in your energy body. What about the positive? The negatives have an effect, and the positive also have an effect. Again, now why? Because when we're thinking good things, that makes us feel good. Then that affects our emotional body. It affects our physical body. All of these parts of our energy body are affected. Thinking of the different energy bodies is like the different energy centers or the different chakras, if you're familiar with them. So they all give us a different way to engage with our energy. Thinking about your thoughts, examining your thoughts and what you're thinking is one of the easiest ways to start getting in touch with our energy body. Now, why do I say that? Because in the West, we're such a mental culture. We give importance to ideas and to the mind and to the brain. You may have thought about thought work. Even when you go into therapy, there's talk therapy. So we're processing ideas. We're doing it verbally. We're doing it through words, through language, through our thinking. So that's one way to go into understanding about energy, especially if you're new. That's an easy way to get into understanding and examining what is going on with your energy. I'm a proponent of let's use our strengths as much as possible to go into areas or arenas that may be new to us or that we may find difficult. And so why start out with a difficult thing? It's just going to make it harder. Let's use what we already know. Let's use the skills that we have to enter into that new realm that we're trying to get an understanding about. So we can do that through our thoughts, through our thinking. One of the things that you can do is to start discerning when do you have these negative cycles of thinking versus when do you have the positive ones, and start noticing. Journaling, for example, is activating that mental body and working with our mental. It's just something that we do culturally, and it's easier for us to do that. Start looking at when do you have the positive thoughts, so when do you have the thoughts that are not as helpful. They don't have to necessarily be negative thoughts, but they could be thoughts of worry or doubt or fear. I'm just terming negative as thoughts that are not as helpful to us. So that's our mental body. So that's one thing that you can start doing and start thinking about, how can I change my thoughts? So we'll talk about tools for that in just a little bit. Now, the next component of thoughts is, what about other people's thoughts? Are you affected by what other people think or what other people say, by ideas that other people have about you or about the world in general? That's also coming in and impacting your own mental body, especially if you start thinking about what those other people are saying, especially if they say something negative about you, or if they've been saying something negative about you for a long time. Sometimes we don't even need to have that person in front of us. Like, we know what they're going to say. We're acclimated to their thoughts that they become disembodied. We don't necessarily need them there to have their thoughts in our heads. But that's part of that mental body. We have our own thoughts, and then we have other people's thoughts, like people that we know. And then we just have thoughts in general, like these ideas that are part of our culture, that we grew up with, that we heard maybe in school, or that we've been hearing for years and years. And so those are all different levels of thinking or different levels of thoughts that affect us, that affect our mental body, and then of course affect all our other parts of our energy body. So you also want to think about that. A lot of times when we think a thought, that thought really isn't ours. We think it's ours because we're processing it, but it's actually coming from the outside, like it's somebody else's. So one thing to do is to start discerning, is it something that somebody else is sending your way and then you are absorbing it? Your energy body is absorbing that thought, and then you process that thought through your mental body. So you keep thinking about it, for example. Our thoughts really impact how we feel. They impact our outlook on life, whether it's a positive one or whether it's challenging. One way that we can start shifting our experience is by noticing what we're thinking and then shifting what we're thinking. Now, that sounds simple. The steps are not that hard, but it can be challenging because thoughts are like habits. They're like bad habits. I'm sure you've heard the statistic. It's like we have, 80,000 thoughts a day or something like that. And most of them we're not aware of. They're unconscious. They're things that just pop through our minds and we're not really in control of them. And that's habitual. We can actually change that habit. One of the tools to use with the mental body is the tool of thought work. So thought work can be really powerful for examining your thoughts and changing your awareness of your mental body. And then, of course, doing the thought work also changes your awareness of your mental body's connection to your emotional body or even your physical body. I'm not sure if you've had that experience, but I know certainly I have, that I start thinking something and then I start ruminating and then I start feeling pressure in my shoulders, for example. And so if we're not necessarily aware of that, then we'll start feeling stressed. We can't sleep. Our body responds. We have all this cortisol that then is produced in our bodies that we know is negative and causes negative effects in our body if our cortisol is always elevated. And certainly our thoughts can help with that. So one tool is to work with thought work. There's several ways of doing it, so there isn't one way. However, the important thing is that in thought work, what you're doing is you're examining your thoughts. You're examining, and then you question your thoughts. So you don't take that thought as given, as a real thing. You start to dialogue with that particular thought and start to get a different perspective on it. There's different ways of engaging thought work. You could do it, for example, in a journal. So if you already journal, then you could do that. Write down what your thought is, and then how is it making you feel? What memories are you connected to? And so on. Some of the activities that we did in the challenge last week are actually examples of thought work. So if you participated in the challenge, you can pull out those worksheets that I shared with you and go through them. And then that'll give you an idea of the types of questions that you can ask yourself for thought work. If you didn't participate in the challenge, you are free to still sign up for it, and then you'll receive the resources for the challenge. But those are some examples of thought work. And one of the reasons why I use thought work as activities is because we can all do it. We can all think about something, and then we can ask ourselves questions and then answer those questions to start examining the actual belief or the thought that we had, and start questioning it and start seeing how it serves us or how it doesn't serve us. Thought work is a tool that you can use to help you with your thinking. And then one of the things that I suggest is, as you're doing the thought work, as you're answering the questions, become aware of how it's affecting your body. So where do you feel tightness? Where do you feel some sort of movement or some sort of energy? It could be a vibration, it could be a quiver, it can be a tightness, it can be like a ball, it can be heat, it can be cold, it can be a lot of different ways, but you can start thinking or start becoming aware of how your thoughts affect your emotional body or how they affect your physical body. So in that sense, I think our thoughts are very important. We want to examine the thoughts that work for us and that get us to where we want to be, to get us showing up for our children the way we want to show up, that get us showing up for our partners the way we want to show up, that the thoughts that we're having on a day where we're feeling really good. What are those thoughts that are running through our mind? Because we're having thoughts. We have thoughts every day. Now, whether we're aware of them or not, then that's what we want to start bringing awareness to. What are the thoughts that we're having when we have a good day? And then what are the thoughts that we're having when we don't have a good day? And there are certain thoughts that can switch our day from good to bad almost instantly. So we're having a good day and then something happens and then we think something and all of a sudden now it's no longer good. And so those are powerful thoughts to begin to dissolve, to begin to become aware of, and then dissolve them, because they have this great impact on us. So yes, thoughts are critical. I don't want you necessarily being afraid of your thoughts. I don't think we should think of thoughts in that way. That in itself is a thought. That are negative thoughts like automatically create this negative effect. That doesn't happen. Usually when something is going to occur, it's because the thought has been thought thousands of times. It's not just this one time, but it's thousands of times, which is also the same thing that happens for good thoughts. So when you are attracting the positive, when you are getting positive results, when you're feeling good, it's because these good thoughts, you're thinking them thousands of times. So it's not a product of this one time. One, don't be afraid of your thoughts. Two, know that you're in control, right? So there's tools that you can use to transform them, to make the positive ones stronger and to make the ones that aren't serving you, to dissolve them and then switch them over to positive thoughts. So that's something that you can do. And the Mastering Your Energy Body, the skills that I teach in that particular program help you to give you different ways of looking at your thoughts and then dissolving your thoughts. And in fact, we call that clearing. So we're clearing these negative thoughts, and we don't just clear the thought, we delve into what part of you is holding that thought. And so usually one of the things that I've discovered through doing this work and doing this work with a lot of people is that there's a part of us holding on to that particular thought. When we have those thoughts, it's a signal to us that that part of us needs attention. So again, don't be afraid of your thoughts, but that is a signal. That's something to work on. That's something that you can, having the proper tools, you can shift it. You can do something about it. So it's important for you to feel empowered, not feel disempowered where you don't have control, but feel empowered. There's something that I can do. And one, like these thoughts, what we're calling challenging or negative, they're trying to serve me in some way. They're bringing something up that I need to deal with. There's something here. There's some sort of energy that's trapped. It's trapped behind that thought. And part of what we can do is we can rescue that energy. And so part of it is looking at what is that thought that's challenging or that's not serving us. And then what is the energy behind it? Of course, just gaining awareness of what you're thinking, and when you talk negatively to yourself, those are negative thoughts. When you take in somebody else's opinion of you, that's not positive. So all of that is something to start with. And just know that it's something definitely 100% that you can shift. The very first step in starting to shift it is developing that awareness. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that last aspect of soul legacy conversations. How does this help us? Like, how can we, instead of being antagonistic, remember if you watched episode 1, I talked about the different energies, the different vibrations. So there's the vibration of antagonism and of conflict, of duality. And then there's the vibration of oneness, where we have compassion, where we accept, and then where we want to transform. And the skills that I teach in the Mastering Your Energy Body course, one of the things that we think about is that these energies, we think of them as negative because of the way they make us feel, and a lot of times the results that we get because of them. However, how can we think the higher vibration thought to have about those thoughts is that they're there because there's something that we need to transform. Like they're there as messengers. So instead of saying, shoot the messenger, let's work with the messenger to really decipher what is the message and what's this energy that is trapped behind that. And so in working with that challenging thought or that negative thought, in dissolving that, then we can rescue this energy and become more whole, because that's ultimately what we want. We want to feel whole. We want to feel complete. We want to be in our power. And when I say that energy is trapped, then that means part of our power is trapped there behind that particular thought. And so we need to be able to rescue that. We need to bring that energy. We need to rescue that energy and bring it back to ourselves so that then we can be whole, so that we can take advantage of that particular energy, because that's part of us. And it's something that we need to be fully ourselves, to be fully in our essence, to be expressing our complete purpose. We need that energy. And a lot of times that's why we feel that something's missing, because something is missing. And we have all of these parts of ourselves that are trapped behind all of these different energies. And some of those are these challenging thoughts. So I encourage you to start thinking about your thoughts. And this is, of course, a lifelong thing that we're going to be doing. Like, we never not have thoughts. It's going to be something that we work with our entire lives. That doesn't mean that the negative thoughts are going to stick with us our entire lives. It's just something that we need to keep processing, because let's say we do thought work and we do deal with a lot of the challenging or negative or destructive thoughts that we had, all those patterns. We're always going to be hearing messages from the outside. We need to be able to process them and know which ones am I going to accept, which ones resonate with who I am and the type of life that I want to have, and the type of parent that I want to be, the type of friend that I want to be, and so on, and which ones don't resonate. Which ones am I going to not accept? Like, I'm going to reject those thoughts and I'm not going to let them really infiltrate my mental body, and so that then I start thinking them. That's going to be an ongoing thing, because we're always going to be in contact with other people. So that means that their thoughts are going to be in proximity to us. And so part of our skill, part of that the skill development that we need to gain is knowing how to not let other people's thoughts affect us, especially the thoughts that don't serve us. And then, of course, how to let the thoughts that do serve us come in. So, thoughts of appreciation, thoughts of compassion and love, like all of that, we want to be able to accept into our energy bodies because those are going to serve us. But then there's those that are not going to serve us. And so we need to be discerning about those. And that's the lifelong journey. That's the thing that we're going to continue doing throughout our lives. We can get to a point where all these things that affected us from our past, that we can dissolve them. And it's possible to do that work. Thank you so much for being here. I encourage you to share about your thought work and what you're discovering for yourself, how it's transforming your life. And if you want to learn more about how to shift those in the Mastering Your Energy Body course, I'm going to be sharing much more about that later. And of course, if you decide to join the Heal Your Legacy program, that is part of that 6-month experience in the Heal Your Legacy program. So thank you so much for tuning in.